Welcome to the Beyond Electric Sheep podcast. I'm Brick Thompson.
And I'm Ed Daniels.
So, Ed, before we got started recording today, we were talking about Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is supposedly not as powerful as Claude 3 Opus, but I've been using it since it came out a couple of weeks ago, I think. Maybe it was only a week ago. I think it was about 2. And have been blown away by it. It's really fast. It's really smart. Claude, to me, actually feels intelligent. I use that word loosely because I don't think it's like a person yet, but it feels more intelligent than, for example, ChatGPT 4.0 for me. So I was playing with it when it first came out and asked it to write a program because I'm always curious how they code. And I asked it to write a program that would play that game Pong. Do you remember that game?
Yes.
Where you have the little paddles.
Right. Yeah, it was one of those first video games.
Yes.
And I think it was even in bars where you could
You did. You
plop
put
in
a quarter
or something.
Yeah, it was one of the first games I played. And then I remember Atari came out with a home game when I was a little kid. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Anyway, so Claude 3.5 Opus cranked out a program and actually ran it in the console on the side. It has a little sort of text area where it works. And it worked pretty well, but had problems. The AI didn't play very well. The ball was moving too fast. It didn't keep score.
Because you were playing against the AI.
Yeah. And so I kept telling it to improve it. Anyway, so I went to show that to you today before we were recording, and I asked it to create a Pong program. This time it wrote it in Python, which it can't write. And so I stuck it into VS Code.
I execute.
Yeah, can't execute. Did I say right? Yeah, can't execute it. So I threw it into VS Code, Visual Studio Code. I have a Python environment set up on my laptop and told it to run, and boom, came up. Really nice little window, good UI.
And I watched as you did that,
And the program was not insignificant. It was, it's not a complicated one, but it was probably 100 lines or a couple hundred lines of code, something like that. And it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So that was your first experience seeing that?
Yeah, really. I'd heard about it. I'd seen it on a few videos, but it would just crank that thing out, and it did it in 30 seconds maybe?
Yeah. And then we went back and asked it to modify things, make the AI. Actually, we had to get it to hook up the paddle to the mouse, to the trackpad so we could play and so on. So it sort of raises interesting questions. When I look at that, I know how to program.
Right.
I don't know how many hours it would have taken me to program that, but a while. Maybe a day, maybe a couple hours at least, but maybe a full day, maybe a couple of days.
It would have taken you that long. It would have taken me 2 or 3 times that long because I'm not versed in Python. I would have to figure that out. Yeah. So
it's pretty interesting. It's kind of a dumb example, but I've used it for other stuff too. We talked in an early episode of our podcast about that dictating.
Yes.
Or summarizing tool that I use. So I dictate a note into voice memo on my iPhone on the way to work and then feed it to this program I built. I wrote it by hand originally, but now I've enhanced it a lot using LLMs, and I probably wouldn't have enhanced it because it takes a lot of time to do that kind of work. And so it really sort of leads to the question of, okay, what happens to programming? And I think you made a comment which was, people who aren't using LLMs learning how to program with LLMs.
Right.
Microsoft calls them copilots, but with a copilot, I think maybe in a tough spot, unless they're working in an industry where they simply don't want an LLM to be involved for some security reasons.
So if one of your kids wanted to get into a programming career, what would you advise them?
I don't know. I do have a kid in a programming career. He got a degree in computer science from Colorado School of Mines.
Great school.
Yeah, great school. Yeah, your son went there as well. Yeah. And didn't have a hard time getting a job after school. But, switching jobs might get harder, I think. You better have that skill. In his case, he's working at a company that doesn't allow the use of LLMs yet, but I think they're all going to start requiring it. And I just can't imagine that companies would prefer to not have people using it. You have to deal with the privacy issues. I think, I'm not positive, but I think there's a huge demand for good code, much bigger than can be easily supplied for the labor cost for companies. And so at least in the near term, medium term, I have a feeling if people learn how to use LLMs to help them code, they'll still be very employable. And having that computer science training, I think, will be valuable because these LLMs make all kinds of mistakes, and you still have to debug, and you want to make sure it didn't create something that has security issues.
I'm interested how you would define the, let's call them residual skills or maybe higher level skills. But if the LLM, like Claude, can just crank out the code like it did just a few minutes ago so easily, but you had to decide. In this case, you told us to do Pong, which is sort of a defined thing. But what are the skills that are still going to be required, even if the actual lines of code can be created?
I haven't thought deeply about it, but I'll just riff and guess. I do think you still are going to need to have really well-defined requirements for the thing that you're coding, and so an experienced programmer will be able to do that well. I think you're still going to need someone who can look at the code and say, all right, is this, are there security problems with it? Are there efficiency problems with it? That type of thing. You're still going to need a human, I think, in the near term at least, maybe medium term, that helps really do quality control and testing and making sure that it's, checking there's no memory leaks and all those things that can get you once you go into production in a true production environment. So I think that it's likely that your average programmer will be able to produce multiples of what they can produce now and at a high quality. But you're still going to want that expertise, I think, to watch that.
So what I heard is requirements definition, quality assurance, security, of course, that are still going to be relevant skills.
I think so. And I've played with enough little programs for myself that I've had LLMs program, and they'll produce bad UIs. A UI that works but is bad.
Right.
We've probably all experienced this where you get a UI that was clearly designed by an engineer who made it work. There's a button there. But then there's a difference between that and an elegant UI. And so someone who understands UI, UX and can help direct that and make that good, I think will be valuable as well. Although all of these things, I'm sure LLMs will get good at over time.
Yeah. So what kind of time frame are we talking about? Is it long enough for somebody that's just getting in the business to have a full career, or are things going to change before that? What's a full career? 40 years, 30 years, 50 years?
I have no idea. I mean, people change what now? The average is 7 different distinct careers in a lifetime for humans now. And you look at the longevity of specifically software engineers in jobs, it's really short. It's less than 2 years on average. I think something like 70% of people leave their programming job within 2 years. I read a stat somewhere that Google's average tenure is 1.1 years or something like that.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It would be if I were going into college right now and thinking, okay, I'm going to be a computer scientist.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily think, I shouldn't do that, but I would want to make sure that I was really incorporating AI into everything. And if the program I was taking was not taking advantage of these tools and teaching how to use these tools well and how to prompt well and how to do testing on code produced by AI, I think I would choose a different program.
Yeah. So I take from what you just said, one, make sure that you're using AI, and if you're getting into a program, it's going to be something that incorporates AI and helps you understand that. Also, as you were saying, it's common for people now to go to a different company after a year or two, and so that means learning as much as you can while you're in place in this job so that you're ready for the next job, and realizing the next job might be less writing lines of code and more, like we were saying, QA, writing specs, doing sort of more of the technical management function.
I think that's right. And if it were me personally, I'd just be getting into the AI field and programming and engineering and AI because I find it fascinating, and I have a feeling there's a need.
Right.
Well, we know there's a desperate need for good people there.
Right. So it's a good pathway to get there, and from the technical side.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, interesting discussion.
Definitely.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay.